Daryl, we ready?
Good afternoon. This is the time and place for the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, October 11, 2023. And we'll begin with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Here. Present. Here.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Next item will be adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Evans, second by Sechrist. All in favor? All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This is a time now for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I don't see any speaker request forms for general public comment, so I'm going to close general public comment and move to consent items 1 through 11 and open public comment on those. And I still don't have any request forms, so I'm going to close public comment on consent items 1 through 11. And then I will ask well, first I'm going to ask for approval of motion to approve the minutes for September 27th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Evans, second by Sechrist. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Then we're going to go to the mayor's office for items 2 and 3.
Nobody here to speak.
Nobody here to speak on those?
I will move to approve those two items.
Okay. We have a motion by Evans and a second by Bieberdorf to approve items 2 and 3. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Finance Department, items 4 through 8, and we'll go to Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is just a routine property surplus resolution. I believe most of the items are old items that are from IT that are being surplused. The next item is a levying of assessment for several properties that had some nuisances that our code enforcement division cleaned up for the community. And so it's levying the cost of those as well as the administrative fees. The next item is the acknowledgement of our general fund cash balance for August. You will see that we have 5.7 million that is designated. That's to cover cash on hand. That's the cash on hand portion of the current year's budget. So 5.7 million. There is 7.1 million that is still undesignated. Of that, though, I just want to remind the council that 5.6 million has been designated for next year's budget. And so truly you don't have 7.1 million available, just to calm everyone down. You don't have that much available cash. Next on item 7, Jamie is here if there's further questions on that, but it is the authorization to proceed with an application and to approve, if awarded, a grant application with the U.S. Federal HUD, or Housing and Urban Development. It's an innovative grant that is for anywhere in the range of $1 to $10 million. I do not believe that there is a match. So there's no local match required for that. It is for innovative housing solutions, and so Jamie has been working with our CDBG program as well as Vicky's group to come up with some interesting projects, as well as hopefully ways that we can work to streamline our process in order to increase the number of affordable homes that we have available in our community. And then lastly, number 8 is a contract amendment for Wavy. It would increase their contract by $8,000. That would make use of some of the cash balance that we have in our CDBG program that needs to be spent by the end of this year. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we're going to go to Councilman Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to move to approve items 4 through 8, but I also want to thank Jamie for continuing to fulfill her promise for what that position was proposed to do, and finding this money that we would not otherwise have. So I need a second for that.
Okay, there's a motion by Evans and a second by Sechrist to approve items 4 through 8 and acknowledging Jamie's work on the grant acquisition. And we'll take all in favor.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next, we'll go to community development. Director Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our first item is our 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. This is a draft report. This is in relationship to the Rapid City Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. It includes the annual activities, planning studies, and projects to be developed by the MPO for 2024. It identifies funding as well as staffing for conducting these tasks. Please note this is a draft program, and you will be also reviewing a final report in the future. We are recommending that this be approved. Our second item is 23 TI 004. This is an amendment to a TIF that was approved in 21. The area that we are discussing is relatively in the Shepherd Hills area, which is along Anamosa Street, east of Campbell Street. It includes portions of Mickelson's Trail, North Valley Drive. When it was originally created, it really met the needs of this area of our community to extend Anamosa Street and Arterial Street. Thank you, Jonathan. One of the primary purposes for the TIF is because of the need of a booster station in order to meet water demands for this area. There's also several detention ponds that are needed to address some drainage issues that are currently existing in this area, and as a part of the project in whole. The applicant came to us and asked for the amendment to do a few things. One is to address the rising cost of construction that has resulted since 2021. As a result of all of that, they came forward with a request to see if the city would become a partner on the TIF and take on the financial responsibility of the booster station. At the same time, they brought forward financial information to show that the TIF will actually cover their costs for streets, utilities, drainage improvements within the project. It will also cover the cost of the booster station. As a part of this request, they're asking that their part of the project be certified and paid back to them first, and then in about 2035, that should be completed, and then the city can start recovering the cost of the booster station. That isn't to mean that the booster station won't get constructed early on, because it's needed, and it will be. In addition to that revision, instead of this being a 2-phased project, it's now being requested as a 3-phase project. Phase 1 is being converted to Phase 1A and 1B. 1B being the booster station. Phase 2, which is East Anamosa Street shown in blue, is still included in the TIF, but most likely will not be completed as a part of this. In addition, there is a detention cell just north of that area that will not be included in the TIF that previously was. And again, it's not being removed from the plan, but the fact that that would be constructed within 5 years to be an eligible cost is highly unlikely. We anticipate in the future that we'll see a new TIF for this area when the owners of that property come forward with additional development. This was brought forward before the TIF committee and the planning commission. It was a pretty heavily vetted discussion. They are proposing to raise the allocated costs in total by about 31%. We requested that they go ahead and bump that up almost to the state limit of 35%, so their end number is about 34.9%, just to ensure that the cost of the booster station is going to be captured through the TIF dollars. In addition to that change, the developer came back and said, in lieu of doing the booster station, we will take on the responsibility of constructing Mickelson Drive, and that's shown in green, extending south on East Anamosa Street on the left-hand side of that master plan. And it will also include streetlights. There you go, thank you, Jonathan, that's Mickelson. And then it'll include streetlights along Anamosa. Not all of that would necessarily be developer responsibility, but they're coming forward to make that connection to the Shepherd Hills area. It's a needed route for traffic circulation throughout the area. The original TIF was in an amount around $25 million. The end total of this with the changes as identified is about $34.9 million. At the recommendation of both the TIF committee and the planning commission, we bring this forward today with a recommendation to approve. Jonathan did a heavy lift on crunching the numbers to ensure that it did validate according to their amortization and performance information. He's standing by if you have any questions specific to that, but we're hopeful that you will support our proposal to have this approved today.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions from council?
No.
Go to Bill Evans.
Well, I definitely will support this because I think it's needed and it's a way of making it happen. And sometimes we have no other means to make some of these things happen. I do want to point out, though, to other members here that we have a tendency to fund TIFs on the exterior of our donut. This one sort of bridges that. It's kind of infill, it's kind of not. It's kind of contributing to spread, and we have to start moving toward a preference for TIFs that actually cause some infill in the city, so we build some density rather than always expanding infrastructure. And when you do that, you're becoming less efficient. So we have to keep that in mind as we approve these things in the future, and hopefully encourage people to be using these TIFs to build within the current, infrastructure we have, rather than have to always expand the city. So I just want to make that comment, but I'll move to approve both these items.
Okay, Director Tech, I don't want to put you on the spot because I see that Mr. Cools was on this, but could you answer a question or two about this? Just,
I'll do my best.
oh, thank you, Dale. So as I understood from what Vicki was saying, that the city's going to be taking on Mickelson Drive, that continuation of that piece?
No,
And-
I think what Vicki had meant to say, or did say, and maybe was heard incorrectly, was, no, that Mickelson Trail connection is going to be included as part of this
Okay.
phase of the TIF. So
Okay.
in fact, I believe the work's mostly done. So no, the city is not taking on that effort. It's included in the TIF.
Okay, and the other things that we're talking about was a booster station, and there's some other utility matters that are on this. It looks like a kind of complicated, to me anyway, because I'm just a city councilman. But are we good with what you see there? I mean, as far as from the Public Works Department, are we?
Yeah, the appropriate utilities have been installed as part of this entire effort. You know, the only change really is who's funding the booster station.
Okay.
And based on the, you know, the financial climate, the escalating costs, this was really the only practical way of getting this off the ground.
Okay, thank you, appreciate your explanation. Does that raise any other questions? Go to Kevin Maher.
Yes, I just have a question about, you mentioned that East Anamosa Street was not going to be completed as part of this project going, I believe it ends up over in the Rushmore Business Park.
Go ahead, Vicki.
So it actually connects with Elkville Road,
Okay,
and that area shown in blue, even
Yeah.
though it's included in the TIF proposal before us today, it most likely will not get constructed as a part of this TIF. It would be phase 3, or what we're calling, since we have 1A and 1B, it would be phase 2, but it's the third phase.
okay, thank you.
Bill Evans?
I have one question, Vicki. Related to that, you know, that extension of Anamosa is such an important route in terms of, you know, being a city arterial and stuff. And that needs to be completed. Would it be in our best interest to somehow make sure that happens as part of this overall thing, and we find a way to make this happen sooner rather than later? Because if it's coming, we might as well do it now, rather than delay the inevitable. Is there some vehicle we would have for maybe making that happen and complete it all as one project, get it finished? My question. No.
Director Fisher?
Well, thank you for the question. That's why we left it in the plan along with the developer's concurrence, is if there does become a mechanism that we could get it constructed, because we concur. It's a vital connection to another arterial street. Unfortunately, based on state law, all expenses have to be incurred within 5 years, and we may not have enough calendar time to get that done. So having said that, if there is a solution, we've got it in the plan. If not, most likely there would be another TIF that would get laid down on top of this one to make that extension.
Thank you. So, Bill, did you have a motion on 9 too? It's for both of them? Okay. So we have a motion on 9 and 10 for approval, a motion by Evans and second by Bieberdorf. All in favor? All opposed, same sign, motion carries. We'll go on to number 11, the Fire Department, and Chief Culberson.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. These are requests to write off some ambulance accounts that are, most of them are going to be past statute of limitations, meaning that we've done every attempt to try to collect those, including send them to collections. And at this point, they're no longer collectible per statute and collection law. So we're asking to write those off and get them off our books. This is also in conjunction with some changes we're doing in our billing department. We've been doing those incrementally, and some of you will remember that we've had some fairly large ones in the past. We're trying to get that down to be within the appropriate time frame. So got one of our billing folks is working pretty diligently on getting these write-offs done. So we'll be bringing this about once a quarter until we're caught up, and then we'll probably still bring them once a quarter, but they'll be in smaller increments.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from council?
Second?
Motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Segrist to approve item 11. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the end of the consent calendar, and now we'll go on to non-consent items 12 through 14. And I'll open public comment on items 12 through 14. And I don't have any speaker request forms, so I'm going to close public comment. and go back to the Finance Department for items 12 and 13. Director Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Item number 12 is the second reading for the fourth supplemental appropriation for the current year budget. There have been no changes made since the first reading. And then item number 13 is another supplemental. These are for open POs that originated in 2022 that were not able to be closed out during calendar year 2022. And so they're carrying over into this current year. Are there any questions?
Oh, I'm just going to read it. Let me just read it in first. And, item 12 is second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6591, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 4 for 2023. And then item 13 is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6592, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2023. And we have a motion by Sechrist and second by Maher. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All opposed? Items 12 and 13 are passed. And finally, we have Public Works. Item number 14, acknowledge status update of the water and water reclamation utility rate study. And I think we'll go to Ms. Hazy.
Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing us to come here today. Today's purpose of this presentation is really just to give you a brief overview of the utility rate study. This has been ongoing for the good part of the last year, so it's time for us to come forward and give you an update. Following this presentation and later into this month, you will see us again where we actually present our findings, and you will see those items on the agenda. With me today is Stacy Titus. He is the Assistant Public Works Director. Also presenting is Director Dale Tech, Public Works Director, and Daniel Ansley, who is obviously the Director of Finance. We also have today to answer any of your questions is Eric Boyda. He's the he is the Water Superintendent. You will remember, well, some of you will remember, back in 2017, we, thank you, approved a financial rate setting policy document, and that is basically our basis for this utility rate study and this presentation as well. We will go through some of these items. The document outlines a series of guidelines, as I said, for future utility rate studies. A lot of effort was put into that document, and it has proven its value in this utility rate study today. We will be discussing the reserve funds, debt insurance and management, balanced operating budget, capital asset policies and procedures, and establishing rates and fees. During this presentation, we will provide an update on our current utility rate study, as I said before, and how that relates to these guidelines here. You also have a copy of it in front of you. I put that on your desk before you walked in. So in 2022, you will remember, some of you will remember that Council allowed for us to enter into an agreement with HDR for professional services in preparing a new utility rate study. This involves city staff and requires a large amount of data be compiled. Which also allows us thorough understanding of an operational and maintenance requirements in these divisions or these utilities. And this process is just about wrapped up here in the next couple weeks. We should be finished with that. The purpose of today's presentation, again, is really communication. We understand the difficulty that this topic brings to council and to the residents. So we as staff feel that it is our responsibility to give you as much information as you need to make an informed decision and for us to be transparent. Our update status is right there in front of you. You will see my check marks there. Again, we entered into that agreement in November of '22. We had several working groups, which included the city staff, and that was around June of '23. We also had a few or a couple utility rate committee presentations, again in May of 2023. And you may recall a Rates 101 presentation that was given by HDR to council, and that was also in May of '23. We had a bit of a reset because of the elections, so the mayoral and council elections caused, again, a little bit of a reset in June. Today is where we are with the communicate to committees, and that's what I did yesterday and again to this group today. We were also going to, over in the next few weeks, we would also like to offer up some site visits to council members. We can present, maybe in a less formal environment, the Rates 101 review again, if that's something that you're interested in. But again, I will be reaching out to you individually to ask if there's anything else that I can provide you to make this process more informative to you so you can make a good decision. Our council agenda item will probably be in November, and then we will review the resolution and ordinance agenda item again in November of '23. So talking about the current utility rate study of 2022, listed here are the areas of focus that we wanted to highlight. The first being the operating and capital expenses. We want to start this focus to highlight areas of critical need and identify efficiencies. That is something that the mayor has expressed to us over and over again, looking at efficiencies and how we can do a better job. As always, we will review our customer classes of service, that is the amount of water that they use, and identify a rate schedule based on that. We also want to ensure, as always, that this is equitable, that our rates are equitable. And again, we also want to ensure that we provide outreach and education opportunities, not just to you, but to our residents as well as we go through this process. As we reviewed the 2017 rate setting policies here, I will briefly discuss our operating budgets. These are paragraphs taken from that policy. Again, that's in front of you. Paragraph 3-1 or 3.1, excuse me, is the self-supporting requirements, where revenues fully funded normal operating and capital expenditures of their respective utilities, Paragraph 3.2, funding must also allow for the preservation of assets through its useful life, meaning that the rates and therefore the funding must meet operating and maintenance requirements for both the water and water reclamation utilities. This goes to fund, for example, employee salaries, equipment, parts and inventory, supplies. It also funds contracted services, software, most importantly, the preventative maintenance, employee training and certification, and also facilities. Stacy will cover the capital aspect of this in greater detail. But basically, these rates allow for the operation and maintenance of both utilities as they meet regulatory requirements for water and sanitary sewer treatment, distribution, and collection. I'm now going to turn it over to Stacy to discuss your capital asset policy procedures.
Thank you, Kristen. I get the privilege of talking about what I call the fun part of the cost of service, which is the facilities we're going to build and the construction projects. The capital asset component of the cost of service model is derived from the utility master plans and also from needs assessment with the operations staff and the operations divisions. These are commonly referred to as the capital improvements projects or CIPs. Most of the CIPs fit within this capital asset component description. At the planning level, the master planning level, we are using the constrained plan, and the constrained plan is comprised of 3 categories of projects. The first project category is what we would call ongoing system improvements. These are your rehabilitation and replacement type of projects. These are typically a 1-for-1 replacement component, and they're usually replaced as a condition of age or the facility or pipeline has reached the end of its design life. These can be both facilities and they can be pipelines for the utility. Other factors, though, that may trigger a project in the ongoing system improvements category would be fire flows, high or low pressure issues within a system, or a reliability issue either for the customer or for the utility itself. The next category of projects, or within the asset component, are what we call capacity improvement projects. And these are volume related capacity issues with the supply or the volume of water needed to serve an existing service area or existing customers. These can be either a facility or a pipeline, and they're usually an upsize. A 12-inch water main is upsized to a 16-inch water main. These are not contributed to growth, so these are non-growth projects. These are just existing systems that have a capacity issue. The third category are our growth and hydraulics categories. These are typically developer-driven projects, and these are improvements that are needed to provide service to new or future growth areas. These categories are further split between facility assets and horizontal assets. And facility assets would be your reservoirs, booster stations, or treatment facilities for both water reclamation and water. The horizontal assets would be your utility pipelines, the sewer mains and water mains. There is a further complication with facilities. Most facilities are designed for, say, a 75-year design life for the building itself. However, in a treatment plant, there are many components that have shorter design lives. Pump replacement, for instance, may be on a 25-year cycle rather than the 75-year cycle. Or filters in a treatment plant for membrane filters are replaced on about 10-year cycles. So those components need to be programmed in to make sure the rates are taking care of those maintenance requirements or replacement requirements within that facility. This category information that I just discussed is a large component of what is needed to develop a utility cost of service model. However, projects funding needs to be discussed too. That is also the cash flow component, and that's an important part of the model. Per the financial policy that Kristen handed out, it defines that annual utility renewal and replacement capital projects, and these would be what I call the regular water main replacement projects, those type of projects, should be cash flowed by the annual revenue or annual rates, meaning we're not borrowing money to do those type of projects. We cash flow them. Non-reoccurring capital projects, which are examples of would be reservoirs, treatment plants, facility types. Those are candidates for long-term debt funding. Some recent examples of projects where we used long-term debt funding would be the Red Rock Reservoir That was a debt-funded project. The Jackson Springs Water Treatment Plant used bonding. And we currently are under construction with the Water Reclamation Facility South Plant Construction Project. That's a debt-funded project as well. In addition, this cost of service model is taking a harder look at the preventive and reoccurring maintenance funding levels for facilities, as it is apparent that adequately funding maintenance is the most cost-effective way and the most cost-effective method of maintaining and preserving the asset value, meaning that's our best bet to keep that asset in good shape is to do required maintenance on a periodic level and making sure we are funding the staffing and the costs of maintenance adequate. With that, I am going to turn it over to Director Ainsley.
Thank you very much. And since the fun part's already been handled, I guess I get to go over the money portion. There are a couple items that are important for everyone to remember. One is what the reserve policy is meant to be for each of your two enterprise funds. If you look at the various components of your enterprise funds and the various components of the reserve portions, right now our water fund is required to have a reserve of 15.1 million. The wastewater fund's required to have a balance of 7.1 million. Currently, right now, because of very wise and prudent stewardship of the councils of the past, you do exceed that. And so why that's important is as you're looking at establishing new rates in the future, you do not have to work to also stash away additional cash for those reserves. So your reserves right now are at a healthy level, which is important as you're establishing your future rates. What are included with your various reserves? The first of which is your operating reserve. That is set at 15% of your annual operation and maintenance for both the water and wastewater. So in the water, that's equal to almost 1.8 million, and the wastewater is about 1.25 million. In the capital reserve, that's equal to 1 year of the annual depreciation expense. So again, that's supposed to be set aside in case there's some sort of catastrophic issue on a main line, on a pump, on a booster station, something like that. In the water fund, that's 5.5 million, and the wastewater, that is 4.5 million. Then there's a rate stabilization reserve. The idea behind that is if in the future a rate study shows that you do have to significantly increase your rates, what that fund has been established, or not fund, but that reserve has been established so that there is cash available that you do not necessarily need to immediately within 1 year reach those levels. Instead, you can spend down some of the cash in there and step up those rates. Eventually, the rates still need to get to that point, but you may not necessarily have to immediately charge such a significant increase. That rate stabilization reserve in the water is 2.6 million and the wastewater is 1.4. Then the city has a contract with the Bureau of Reclamation for $1 million reserve for Pactola for any issues that come from that. And then based off of our bonds, we are required to keep a reserve balance to pay for almost 1 year's worth of bonds if something were to occur. In the water fund, that is 4.2 million. In wastewater, it's less than $0.5 million. That is going to change though within the next year's time as additional bonds start to become due. Then when you start looking at debt issuance, and again, that's important to remember what Stacy was bringing up, that you do not want to issue debt as a way to finance regular operations and maintenance. But instead, debt should be looked at is if you are expanding your system or adding a significant new component that's going to bring in new customers, new utility ratepayers, or there's a significant new expansion that's necessary for regulatory means that's going to have a useful life of greater than 30 years. any of those debt issuances, it is important to look at our current financial balance as a community. We are rated by Moody's at a AA2, and so we're just one step away from a AAA bond rating, so our rates are highly advantageous. However, as I think everyone knows right now, is not the most advantageous time for debt issuance. However, when you look at the majority of rates, if we were to issue any sort of debt to make any upgrades in our systems, that is a tax-free debt issuance, and so it is at a lower rate than what the private sector gets, but still now is not necessarily the best time. Usually what you would anticipate is in the next 18 to 24 months, oftentimes the federal government releases some sort of program to help stimulate the economy. And at that point, that's probably when we would want to start looking at any debt issuance to expand our system. With that, if there are any other questions, or I will turn it over to Dale.
Daniel, can I ask you a quick question about reserves?
Yeah.
Do you feel like reserves are going to need to be adjusted to account for inflation or the cost of debt, which you addressed?
Yes. Yeah. Every year, the reserve level actually continues to increase, and that's similar not just in these utility funds, but also in our general fund, everywhere else. You will see our reserve balance every year gets reset, and unfortunately, because of inflation, everything you said, it increases. Thankfully, we do have a healthy reserve, and so it's not that it'll have to be, built up significantly, but I would imagine, and I have not run the numbers, but I would imagine next year, all of the reserve numbers I told you will probably be about 2 or 3% higher than what I just told you.
Thank you.
Okay, I am the last speaker today, and I am going to be the quickest speaker today as well. So really, establishing rates and fees is a culmination of the other dots that you see on the presentation in front of you there. And I think the first thing I'll talk about today is the importance of the policy that was set in 2017. Here are 2 items out of the policy, paragraph 5.6.3, stating the importance of doing a rate study every 5 years. That helps the sustainability and stability of not only the utility itself, but the stability for our customers as well. Paragraph 5.6.4, if the rate study is not completed within the 5-year time frame, we should be doing CPI increases, and that's to take care of any inflationary issues that would exist in place of a rate study. It is certainly not our intent, and hasn't been for the last year, to do the CPI, but rather enter into a whole new 5-year study, once again, that provides the sustainability and stability for our entity. I think this predates most of you, but a number of years ago, we didn't do a rate study for a number of years, and our rates didn't change, and certainly any of the advances we made in our reserves were wiped out, and so we had to play catch up. This is the most effective thing to do. This is a nationwide standard for utilities, not only of our size, but smaller and larger. And then finally, speaking to this slide, the APWA, which is the American Public Works Association, also strongly recommends that the rates for what you're doing need to be done in a very effective manner, and that's exactly what this process is and what this process means. I also need to give a lot of credit to the many teams of the city, the finance department, public works department, legal, all of the people that we need to keep this utility running, or these utilities running, play a very important part in this entire process, and they've done an amazing job of keeping things in check, making sure that the data is available for a consultant to give us a great recommendation on what our rate structure should be. So I can't give enough credit to the folks that work behind the scenes day in and day out that run these utilities, and the great job that they do. Also, looking forward to, if any of you have any questions at all or want to learn more about the process, we are more than happy, as Kristen said, to schedule time with you to go over this, to review the information provided by our consultant. And with that, I'll stand by for any questions as well as the rest of the team.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councilman Evans.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for this presentation. Of course, it's the second time I've seen it. But, you know, some of us up here are always belly aching about the lack of timelines and transparency and everything. And this is the kind of stuff that I love, because if we don't follow through on what you've shown us and follow that timeline, then we have nobody to blame but ourselves. So I want to just thank you for doing that to accommodate people like me. So thanks.
Lindsay, we'll go to Councilwoman Sechrist.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, I was just curious, when was the last time our utility rates were increased?
Well, the last 5-year plan was from 18 through 22. So year 2022 was the last year.
Okay, and so the rate increases were included in that 5-year plan?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Dale, or Stacy, I'm not sure. You know, Stacy talked about the infrastructure maintenance or cost of upkeep. And it might just be me and I have more awareness now, but have we had more water main breaks this year than normal? And does the data show that we have to have more budgeted for that, or?
No, I believe I've been very public in saying this, that it seems like we have a lot of water main breaks. For a utility our size, we actually have fewer than average. We just publicize every single one of them as public outreach, just to make sure people are aware that their service might be affected, and primarily to let people know that there might be traffic impacts by it. So no, we don't see an excessive amount of failures in our system. We just publicize them more.
Okay, and so you're not really forecasting, I mean, because of the age of the system, or certain parts of the system, do we need to be budgeting more for that, or?
That is a process we go through every year. We work with our hands-on people, our utility maintenance folks, who actually track the breakage. They know what the condition, generally if there's a problem, they know what the condition is of, let's say, a block or an area. And yes, we do plan for that, but it's an annual thing, and we've been doing that for decades.
Okay.
So that's part of the process.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you. Anything else from council? Can I have a motion to acknowledge this? Go to-
I'll move to acknowledge this presentation.
Okay.
And then I want to talk.
Okay, there's a motion by Evans and a second by Sechrist to acknowledge, but Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Oh, no,
Oh,
it's
you don't?
unrelated to this.
Okay, well then let's take a vote on this then. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And then the next item on the agenda is council members to discuss items regarding whatever you want to discuss, I guess. And so with some trepidation, I'll turn it over to Bill Evans.
I just wanted to let you guys know that in lieu of, or in addition to the invocation Monday, I'm going to take and ask for time to acknowledge the life of Wes Storm, who probably as much as any person over the last 50 years has shaped the hearts, minds, the character of this town. I believe Wes first came to prominence here when he won our first Legion State Championship as the coach back in the early 60s. Then I met him, first of all, when I was a lifeguard for the pools through high school and college, when I believe he was helping run the rec department. And then when I came back after college and started, he was my activities director. He went on to be the principal at West Junior High. And I'm going to tell you, this is a guy who was loved by everybody. The South Canadian Lutheran Church was packed to the, hilt the other day. And it was all positive. He was the kind of leader that you wanted to follow. He was made up of all positive energy, nothing negative. And even as late as a couple years ago, before the Dimensionists started taking him, I would get, after a municipal band concert or something, "Great, John," a thank you note. The guy was the kind of leader you should have. I think about what the state would be like if we ever had a governor like that, who could just see what wasn't there and make great things happen because people were dying to do the best work for him. So I'm going to take time on Monday to acknowledge his life because I think it's important that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Can you get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Bieberdorf, a second by Sechrist to adjourn. All in favor? We're adjourned.